Hey, it's me, Afro Tarot, and welcome back. Thank you everyone who reached out to me with regards to my last video. Really appreciate it. I hope you're all well. And what I've decided to do is come back and look at decks that represent people of colour. We know that in tarot there's very limited representation. It's very problematic. You know, most of the mainstream decks that we can buy in, say, Waterstones, Barnes and Nobles, or on the local high street really and truly do not represent people of colour at all. However, there are some decks out there. Black independent artists are creating decks, and some of the major tarot publishers are also producing decks now, which is fantastic. So in this video, I'm going to choose two decks out of my own collection that I'm just going to give a brief overview about why I've got them, what I like about them, what I don't. And I'm going to put the links to the decks in the description box. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the first deck that I want to discuss is Gina Thies Tarot of the Moors. This is a beautiful, beautiful deck. It's based on the three Abrahamic religions, which would be Judaism, Christianity and Islam. It comes in a beautiful box. I love the box, absolutely love the box. It opens, look at that. And it's got some really great quotes from sort of like major players in the tarot community. It comes with a very in-depth guidebook. There is no little white book that you have to throw away. It comes with a very, very in-depth guidebook. And there is Gina on the back. She's a woman of colour. She's a writer, an artist, and she's also written some other books about tarot. So this is absolutely amazing. I love the artwork on the book, which is the same on the box and is also the same on the cards. Inside the book, it's just really, really nice. Inside the book, there is, let me just find it, a little bit about Gina and her history and why she's created it, and there's an introduction. There's also a little section here on who the Moors were, if you can see that, the history of the Moors. And if you don't know that much about the Moors, which when we do look at history, unless you're specifically studying certain parts of history, the Moors kind of get overlooked. They originated from North Africa and they kind of travelled down through Arabia and down into Spain, and they were very well known in Europe. The Moor of Venice, which is Othello, who Shakespeare wrote about. So they are featured in history, and she's just kind of brought it alive, which I think is fantastic. I also think it basically does give a lot of representation, and it coming from that historical and that cultural aspect kind of feeds into the whole kind of tarot community, and it's often been forgotten about. Moorish art is featured a lot in the Renaissance period, especially the Renaissance period of Europe. So it's good stuff. I was about to go off there into another place. I did study art and visual culture at university, and this is another reason why I really, really love this deck. So starting off, this is the back of the deck. As you can see, it's the same as the book, as the box. It's really nice. It's got a really nice matte finish. My only gripe is this: I do not like gilded edges. It's a personal thing. It doesn't detract from the deck at all. It's just a personal little quibble of mine. I am not keen on gilded edges, because I feel when you start shuffling the deck after a while, when it gets old, you start, you know, I just, it's not the coolest thing for me. But that's just a minor. Doesn't take away from the cards at all. Now, I was going to go through these and I just realised I've just shuffled them. But just quickly show you some of the imagery. Now, the border doesn't really bother me that much. It's a mute border. It's not like a garish border. It's a mute border, and again we have that mosaic stuff that matches the stuff on the back of the cards. So some of the Some of the major arcana are named differently in the deck, but in the book she does give indicators as to the correspondence. So you do get all of that information. She also, which I think is fabulous, she also gives so much information. So you get the esoteric, you get the Hebrew, you get the astrological bit. It's got all the deacons in there. It's got all the astrological placements if you're really into the Kabbalah. It's got the paths. It's got the Hebrew names. Everything is in there, okay? So I think that is just absolutely amazing. You don't have to sort of spend loads and loads of time trying to work out what all of it means. It's all there for you in the guidebook. Now the court cards are named slightly differently, so we'll just quickly go through those. So the pages are princesses, and as you can see, representation, skin tone, colour. She also hand painted these herself. They have that really nice authentic feel. The colours are really great as well. So the pages are princesses. The knights are Maliks. The queens are Malikas. Again, beautiful representation there. And the kings are Emirs. So she's gone for quite an archaic word, but it is again in keeping with the tradition, and it's just beautiful. This is one of my favourite cards. The desert, which would be the hermit. I just love the way it's been drawn, and he's looking out, and what's he looking about, and all of those kind of things. Here we have alchemy, which I think is temperance. Forgive me if I don't know. Temperance. And what I love, this is the Five of Cups. Just look at the traditional. Now you can see that this figure is kind of like sitting down, and this is how you eat and drink in African cultures, and also sort of Muslim cultures as well. So I think this is absolutely amazing how she's captured everything, and she's put in a lot of work. The devil is the jinn, and again, when you're reading this and you're reading it from that cultural perspective, and you understand sort of some of the wording, and you understand jinn, and then you know what it means, it does give that kind of richness to your reading. So this is the tower. As you can see, Islamic symbols. She's really kept it very authentic, and I just think that's amazing in the deck. And again, the representation is so strong, absolutely strong. And this really is a deck of colour. It's varying different hues of melanin, and it's absolutely brilliant. So if you're looking for a deck that has representation and also has that cultural element, then this is a must. Even if you just want it for the history and for the art, it's another must. It is definitely one to have in your tarot collection. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and it reads fantastically. What do I mean by it reads fantastically? It's very fluid in how it reads. It's very clear in how it reads. The cards kind of just flow together. There's this kind of like fluidity that just runs through the cards. Very clear, very distinctive messages. I haven't interviewed the deck yet. Maybe I'll get round to doing it, but I was just able to just jump in and start reading, and I have found that the readings that it gives are very sharp. That's one thing I will say with this, and I think I've noticed it in the Suit of Swords. It is very sharp in its, not sharp as in the readings, you know, some decks you just, oh gosh, they're quite scary. It's not like that. It's very sharp in terms of it being very crystal clear clarity. So yeah, brilliant. So the second deck, Scarbero's Tarot Nefertari, not to be confused with Nefertiti. Nefertari was Ramesses II's wife. I think she was the chief wife, the principal wife, and this was, we're going back to about the 19th dynasty. So yeah, okay. Now I'll talk about what I love first of all, okay, before I get on to the stuff that I'm really not happy about with this deck, okay. Now first of all, look at that gold foil that's embossed on the back is just amazing. The borders are just so small. They're not intrusive borders at all, okay? As typical with Scarabero. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure it's Scarabero, right? I'm positive it's Scarabero. You've got all the different languages at the top. I know this kind of pisses people off sometimes because they're like, just choose one language and just print the deck. But, you know, it's really good that it's in so many different languages. And just, oh, look at that. I just think the gold really makes the actual image pop out beautifully. They have kind of distressed the cards a little bit so it looks a bit how it would have probably looked in antiquity. Just very vibrant imagery. Just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And on a sunny day, when you open this, you could actually get blinded because it's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, the cardstock itself is really good. Okay, I'm just going to be careful with the shuffling because I've got these in particular order. Brilliant for shuffling. You can shuffle any way, and if you like to do sort of poker shuffling, and again with the other deck as well, you can do that. Poker shuffling is real simple. Okay, the cardstock isn't necessarily very thick, so after a while they will get a bit tattered and a bit worn, but pretty much this is just an awesome deck. Okay, so what is it that I don't like? Bearing in mind the deck is in 4 languages: Italian, Spanish, English and French. Okay, so it's in 4 languages. This is the guidebook that comes with it. Can you see how thin that is, right? Considering that this is a deck that doesn't follow traditional Rider-Waite, okay, 2 ways. One, the images are not traditional Rider-Waite. They're not even set up traditional Rider-Waite, okay? And also, it doesn't follow the same system as in terms of some of the major arcanas. So, like Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck and like Marcelli's deck, they do not follow the same pattern of justice and strength, okay? Strength being 8 and justice being 11. In this deck, it's switched around, so its justice is now 8 and strength is 11. For those that know that some decks switch around the 8 and the 11 for astrological reasons, it is definitely like this in this deck, which, if you don't know why that is, it's something to do with astrology and planets and etc, etc. And there's a whole discourse on it, which I'm not going to explain. I can't actually find the 2 cards because I have shuffled them, and I did say that I wouldn't shuffle them, and I have. But yeah, so they have changed those around, which, you know, it doesn't really affect readings or anything like that. But there is obviously nothing in the book to say that they've done that. So if you are new to tarot and you do have this, you might not notice it, but yes, they have changed strength and justice around, which does happen in some decks. Okay, there is a lot of Kemetic symbology in this deck, and if you know nothing about Kemetic symbology, it will make the cards difficult to read. Now, on some of the decks, okay, take for instance the back. Okay, so this is called the Widged, right? Or the Eye of Horus. There's no explanation for that. There's also some hieroglyphs on the back of the card. There's no explanation of what those hieroglyphs mean. So if you don't know anything about any of the Kemetic symbology, for instance, the Scarab Beetle, the Diged, the Wasp Scepter and the Sensen Flower, the importance of the falcon, or cast spirit, you might just read it in terms of the traditional Rider-Waite, and for me that means you lose some of the richness and some of the history and philosophy of Kemet, right? So for instance, the scarab beetle predominantly is a sign of being of rebirth or recreation, being born, okay? It's something new. It really represents newness. But if you didn't know that, there's nothing in this little book. And also with this little book, I've found that some of the interpretations are they're just out there. I don't know where they've got them from. Like with the Djed, now this is the 10 of Wands, and there's the Djed, and I happened to work this one out purely because of the pillars, the 4 pillars. Now, if you don't know what the Djed is, this here is the backbone of Asar. So this would be Asar's backbone, right? So this is the 10 of Wands. So the 10 of Wands typically in the Rider-Waite would be about feeling overburdened, the weight of responsibility, you know, feeling heavy, feeling weighed down, all of that kind of stuff. So because the Djed symbolizes stability, in this reading, yes, it's very similar, but it means so much more. And now we see the guy trying to hold it up, you know, he's trying to keep it upright. So this talks about destabilization, which I think is a little bit different to what it means in the Rider-Waite. But if you didn't know what that was and you read it traditionally by the Rider-Waite, it would have a different meaning. There's another card in here, and actually it's the 4 of Pentacles. So the 4 of Pentacles, typically in the Rider-Waite, is somebody that's being quite closed off, or somebody that's being quite possessive, somebody that's not giving, somebody that's not open. Whereas in this deck, the 4 of Pentacles is about receiving, being open, abundance and blessings from on high. Now have the concept of, I suppose, mind, soul and spirit is encompassed into the Ankh, and from the Ankh we get Ka, Ba and Ankh, and the kind of that Ankh symbol, I'm trying to find it, I can't find it. I'm so sorry, I can't find it, but you can just Google Ankh and it will come up. Within that you have the whole being of mankind, or humankind, whichever one you want to wear. It's really funny because I'm saying Black Feminist Matters and I'm talking about mankind, but you have the whole being of human beings basically, and it's such a deep and wonderful concept. So when we see the 4 of Pentacles, and then we see the sun, knowing that Ra is the sun god, you can actually see here on the rays of the sun, you can see the Ka spirit. Now if you go and look it up, it's like that. So when we look at these 2 cards, they actually mean something different. The 4 of Pentacles talks about being open to receive abundance, as opposed to being closed or being possessive. It's about being open, opening up your entire being to receive. Okay? I just think it's amazing. And also that we have this one and her, and then this figure standing on it. So it means so much more than just what we see in the traditional Rider-Waite's 4 of Pentacles. And then when we look at the sun, now typically the sun is about vitality, joy, rejuvenation, renewal. It's about blossoming. It's all that wonderful stuff. But here now, when we see that it has the Ka in it, the Ka spirit in it, and this is Ra, the sun god, giving. So now we see it as life force. Now we see it as feeding the soul, ability on the creator. So I think it gives it different meanings. But if you don't know anything about Kemetic philosophy, you're absolutely lost, and there's no guidebook that comes with this. Then we have Asar again in green, and this again is about vitality. He was often depicted as green, and this is about vitality again. Kemetic philosophy is very much about being reborn, rebirth, cycles. It's so deep. And again, there you can just see the wasp scepter, the sensi flowers, or the blue lotus, or the water lily, that was featured very much in Kemetic philosophy. Also the falcon. Now again, the falcon turns up a lot in the Suit of Swords. And again, if you don't know anything about Kemetic philosophy, you won't know the importance, but the importance of the falcon was Ra, spirit of truth. Okay, the spirit of truth. So when you're reading these cards from a Kemetic perspective, I think there's a much richer meaning to some of the cards than just reading it as a traditional Rider-Waite. And if you read it as a traditional Rider-Waite, you lose some of that richness. You lose some of those concepts and some of that philosophy that can really, really add another dimension to your readings. So that's my gripe. Other than that, it's such a beautiful deck. And I have read it from a Kemetic perspective, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. So what do? Well, if you're anything like me, I have been into Kemetic philosophy for a very, very long time, and I do have a lot of books. So for me, it wasn't that difficult to go and decipher what some of the things meant. And I'm not an Egyptian buff, but I do know a little bit. I know enough to get by. However, I would recommend, if you are interested in this deck, I would recommend that you buy the Per-Hemeru, which is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's by Dr. Ashby. This book is fantastic if you are really wanting to get into the philosophy of Kemet or Egypt. And I would say you could actually use this as a guidebook, and it will enrich the read. I will put the link to where you can get this from. I think it's definitely still in print. I mean, I bought this a few years ago, but it definitely is still in print. And again, it will give you really great information. There's all that stuff about cast spirit and Ba and the Ankh. And what it all means, where it all comes from. There's also quite a lot of to do with the symbols that you will see in the deck as well. So it's worth an investment if you are impressed with this deck and you want to take it to another level, and you don't just want to read it in the traditional way, and you do want to kind of read it more of an intuitive or more in a Kemetic way. It does read very well. What do I mean by that? I often hear people in videos go, it's an amazing read. What do I mean by it reads very well? Again, the cards are very fluid. From a spiritual perspective, the cards are very in tune with spirit. I mean, you're just not going to get anything better than this unless we go to another deck. And I'm going to say that about all of the decks that I consider to be quite spiritual and quite esoteric. But yeah, the readings, especially if you're doing quite a lot around self-development, or you want to do something that's talking about what's going on within and what you know, maybe your shadow side, if you want to do some shadow work, it's very good for that as well. It's very how can I explain it? It's not intense. Again, it's very truthful. Yeah, I would say it's quite sharp as well. The cards are quite fluid. When I did my interview your deck with this, and I asked what was the intention of this deck, it was to bring enlightenment. Okay, it was to bring enlightenment, and I got the sun for that. So it is really about using this deck as a tool of enlightenment. Looking at the two different decks and how they read, I would say this is very much I would say this particular deck is very much about enlightenment. And I would say that this deck, the Tower of the Moor, is more about seeking clarity for your situation and seeking understanding for your situation and how to take action and how to move forward. So these are the two decks. I will put the links down in the description box if you want to ask me any questions. Maybe I've mispronounced words wrong and you want to come and correct me, feel free. Oh, just a quickie about the price. They are at the more expensive end of the tarot range. So this particular deck, I was very fortunate to get a discount, but it does retail at about $25.99 in the UK. This deck I bought at an independent bookshop in London. I think I paid roughly, I think it was about $24.99. I do know you can get it on Amazon, because I have told a few people to get it on Amazon, and I think it retails for about $22.99 on there. So they are worth investing, even if you don't want to read them in that way, you just want to have them as a deck in your collection. They're both fantastic decks, and yeah, the only thing, this little book, throw it away. All right, now you